Hey everyone, if you're a developer working with AI and you want to build reliable, maintainable AI systems, then this video is for you. In this video, we'll show you why owning your own prompts is critical for production AI systems and demonstrate the pitfalls of using black box templating systems. If you don't know who we are, I'm Dan, AI engineer, and this is Dave Odell,
I
DevOps engineer. We've both been building software for over 20 years. In this video, we go over factor 2 of the 12-factor agents methodology. Factor 2 is all about owning your own prompts and not outsourcing your prompt engineering to a framework. In order to demonstrate this, we use CrewAI, which is a black box templating system. I kind of compare it to Rails, so it helps make things a lot easier, but you don't always know what's going on under the hood. I'm going to give an overview of the way their system works. So you define agents. The agents will be prompted with user input. They'll work through each task, and then there'll be a final outcome. And then we use Langfuse, which is an open source LLM engineering platform that allows you to see traces, evals, manage your prompts, and maintain metrics for your AI systems. We're going to go through traces today and show you what CrewAI is actually doing under the hood. All right, now Dave and I are going to talk just a little bit about our experience with CrewAI. As I mentioned before, it's this black box system, but it does make things super easy to set up. Unfortunately, though, it's
yeah
super new and
yeah
not all the things are working as beautifully. Dave
yeah
initially tried to use Claude Code. You want to talk a little bit
yeah
about that?
yeah it was actually fun because I'd never used this before. So my first thing was to hey, I'm going to use Claude Code. And that is no bueno. Do not use Claude Code. Claude doesn't know anything about CrewAI. It was a total teardown. I had to rebuild from scratch. Even when I would have Claude Code fetch specific documentation sites, it still just did a terrible job. So that was out. Another thing is that when I initially built it, they have a command you can run like Claude create, chatbot or whatever, and it'll just build an initial framework for you, which is really nice. And it works great. There's some difficulties there. I'll
Yeah, so
show
this
you
is, I
highlight.
think the embeddings example is pretty funny because, in their documentation, it's just like, oh yeah, add these files to a directory and it'll just work. You'll have a knowledge base. You don't really think about like, oh, actually we need to create embeddings. We need to use a vector DB database or anything like that. And it just starts using it under the hood. It happens to default to OpenAI to create your embeddings, even when you say you want Anthropic to be your
Yeah,
LLM.
yeah,
It looks very straightforward when you look at all the docs. It's just like, okay, create some YAML files. We'll walk you through all those YAML files, show you how it all works. But then all of a sudden it's doing stuff that you're not expecting. If you were
yeah.
building it on your own, you'd be like, okay, I need to create embeddings. Okay, I need to choose a vector database. In this case, it chose ChromaDB. We actually didn't even realize that until our systems blew up.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Dan blew his system up and then he checked that code in and then I downloaded it and then it blew my system up. So he basically created a virus that blew my system up. And here's the weird part: the Chroma DB was not in our project. It was on our Apple laptops. It was under like our home directory library, like application settings or something. It
Yeah,
took
it was just
like
blowing up. We didn't know
you
why.
you tried yeah, you tried to have Claude find it and Claude couldn't find it.
Yeah. I had to browse the code on GitHub. Then locally, I found the code. I put a breakpoint in, and I was like, oh, that's the directory it's using. Okay. And then we found it. We both deleted the knowledge folder that was in our Mac applications
Yeah.
directory, not even a lower level Unix directory. It was like in applications library or something. So we're just like, why? Claude Code and I think Grok both assumed, yeah, it's going to be in your project folder. It's built on SQLite. That's where you put your SQLite databases in your project folder, but
Yeah.
not with CrewAI.
Yeah. So this is actually a really fun project for me. It was a lot of work, more work than I thought, but once I got it working, like it works okay, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it does what it's supposed to do. So
Yeah,
do you want me to show? Want me to show? I want to show. Can you switch to my screen, Dan? I want to get my part going. I just
yeah,
want to
yeah.
show you one thing with documentation here. So I'm going to show you some things about how to set up. So basically, when you run like Claude create, like the name of the project, create skeleton for you, you're really only editing 4 files. There's a main.py, there's a crew.py, and then there's a task.yaml and a agents.yaml. But one thing I want to point out to you is like we were using the task file knowledge source. So knowledge source in crew equals rag basically, right? So it's pretty nice. Like once you get configured, you just drop a bunch of files into directory and it just consumes those. But however, there is one thing in the documentation. It says create crew text file source on agents or crew level, and that is incorrect. It has to be set at both the crew and the agent level, or it will not use those knowledge sources. Dan will point that out in a little bit. But anyways, the two YAML files you edit, the two like basically prompts you need to create are, as you look at this diagram, you have agents call up tasks. And so you first need to create your agent. So we have two agents. Our use case is we have a bunch of markdown files for like our company, App Vitals company. And it's like how to do blue-green deployments, code review guidelines, how to handle what happens like during a database outage. If you're having like a bunch of errors from your Prometheus Grafana, how do you handle that? And then how is Kubernetes set up? Like how does auto scaling work? So we fed all these into the knowledge factor. And the way this chatbot is designed, it's supposed to be like if you're a DevOps engineer or a software engineer, if you need technical support, instead of looking at the docs, this chatbot will basically find all the information that you need that's in these markdown files for you. So there's two agents. We have the DevOps assistant, and you define the role, the goal, and then the backstory. So it's pretty straightforward. And then the knowledge researcher here, which is the thing that's actually to go and search the markdown files for you. And so you also have to define these here as well. But as Dan will show you later, like normally you have a user prompt and a system prompt. None of these are system prompts. These are all just essentially, I don't know what you'd call them, Dan. What would you call these? They're not.
I'd say they're template variables. But one thing
Yeah.
cool about it is if you aren't familiar with creating a system prompt, actually each one of these attributes is very crucial to building out your system prompt. So the role, goal, and backstory all are crucial aspects to building out the system prompt. But as you'll see in a little bit, they actually add more to it, and we'll walk through that later.
Yeah. So these are my agents, and then here's my task. And so you have your research query, and then you formulate the answer. You can see this is where the user query is injected into here on this side. And then there's some writing these wasn't that hard. It took a little bit of tweaking. When I first ran this on this agent here, it's looking at knowledge base, what it needed to find in a single markdown file. It would not be able to answer the second question. So I had to tweak and say, look for all markdown files, not just the first one. So it's kind of like writing a prompt, being as descriptive as possible. Super important here as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and walk through the code now. Actually, the code is super simple. This is one of the cool things about CrewAI is there's a YAML file, we have some markdown for knowledge, and then there's really only two files. There's main. The main is kind of similar to our agent loop that we created in our last video, but you capture the input. There's a simple check to see if they're done, clear out some spaces, and then send it off to your crew. That's it. And then let's walk through the crew, which is also pretty straightforward. So you define your agents and your tasks, as we showed in that diagram earlier. This is the knowledge, so it's loading up everything from the knowledge directory. So it's similar to web frameworks like Rails, where they have a specific directory. All your knowledge goes in a knowledge directory, and so you don't even need to prefix it with knowledge. You just throw the files in there. Then you build out your agents, and this is just pulling from that YAML config, and then your knowledge sources. So there's really not much to it. So the researcher gets the knowledge sources, and then the researcher essentially hands off its answer to the assistant. And then here's the tasks. So research query, then formulate an answer. And then finally, we have our crew. And that's it. You set up the agents and the tasks. This is the process sequential. So you can also do a hierarchical process. And that will actually have another agent that decides how to distribute or to execute the tasks or which tasks even need to be run. We're just doing the simple sequential thing here. And then we have to pass the knowledge sources into the crew. And as Dave pointed out, we were trying to figure out, all right, who needs knowledge sources and why? What we ultimately found out is that You specify all of the knowledge sources when you instantiate the crew, and then each agent can have those knowledge sources if you want. In this case, we just want our researcher to be aware of everything, but you have to give them to the crew for them to even be available to the agents. All right, now I'm going to
Yeah. One thing,
pass it.
one thing I want to note
Yeah.
is that like for this file alone, I think we added like 10 lines of code.
Yeah.
That's it. Like
It's
literally the
pretty
most
crazy.
minimal. Yeah, pretty crazy.
All right, Dave, you want to walk through the demo?
Sure. So this is a real simple demo. We have 5 knowledge sources, and my prompt is designed to retrieve data from at least two of those markdown files. So once you're in a directory, just run CrewAI run, and it boots everything up. So here we are. And then I'm just going to do this. So there's markdown files for like blue-green deployments and Kubernetes. So I'm just saying, what are the steps for deploying a new version using blue-green deployment and configuring HPA for auto scaling? So here we go. So let's just go through the output here. So it's starting up. In this task, I believe what it's doing is this is where it would upload the knowledge files to the Chroma DB, because this step, it's actually retrieving everything and some knowledge, right? So it found the Kubernetes architecture piece, but there's no mention of blue-green deployments here yet. So then the knowledge searcher here, it's going on. So we have like database knowledge base researcher. And now you can see in this step, continued, now it found the blue-green, because remember our question is about blue-green and Kubernetes. So it found the first instance in the Kubernetes file. Then it answered the second part of the question, which is blue-green deployments. And so here's the markdown file. It's very verbose, which is fine. And then here's your answer. It's retrieval completed. You got all now you have your final answer essentially in here. And it's basically going to format your answer. So the answer is going to be down. There's a lot of output here. And you can just run
Yeah.
this, you can just download this and run this yourself. But
This is
then,
the verbose equals true.
yeah. So here's the answer, right? So steps for deploying a new version of Blink deployment and configuring HBA for auto scaling. So it's going to go through the blue green, and here's the exact steps. So it's not giving like a summary. Because remember, in the task or agent file, I forget which one, we simply say do not give a summary. Give us the actual like commands we need to run. So these are the actual. This is the actual output from these files. And then down here, so that this is the blue green, and then this is for the horizontal pod auto scaling. It's pretty good. Did it give us the answers that we want? Yes, it did. So that's the important thing.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, now I want to walk you through Langfuse to show exactly what's being sent to each system that it's integrated with.
Yeah, Dan,
So,
I think of the Langfuse as like Datadog for prompts, basically.
yeah, it's a tracing system for your AI. You can see there's a lot of detail in here, but we'll show you exactly what we see. So first, when Crew starts up, it sends everything to Chroma. So it takes every knowledge file that you're using and it adds it to Chroma DB or whatever vector DB that you choose. It actually supports quite a few, similar to LangChain. It integrates with all the LLMs, all the vector DBs, and things like that. And so here, this is that embedding that we were talking about earlier. This is the thing that depends on OpenAI. So even if you choose, say, Anthropic as your LLM, you need both OpenAI and Anthropic configured. So we created embeddings for our knowledge, just does it in one big chunk here, and inserts it into Chroma. Then it creates the crew. Nothing too interesting here. I mean, it shows you the configuration that you sent. So I'm sure in production or other systems where it's maybe more complicated, you can see all the details that were sent to the crew when you start it up. So these are both startup tasks. And then these are the 2 tasks that we execute with our agents. So the first one, remember, goes to the researcher. The task is created. This is the research task. Then it goes through here. It actually sends something to OpenAI first. And so your goal is to rewrite the user query. So this here was not in our prompt at all, right? So this piece here was not in our prompt. Do not include any text, then the rewritten query. So it identified that you attached knowledge to your agent. And whenever that agent receives the task, it will first run this system prompt to generate a query. So this is all just CrewAI. You have no control over this at this point, which is fine for demos, but as you build more and more systems and you try to optimize them, RAG and these types of prompts are super important for getting better and better accuracy, and it depends on the domain that you're working on, right? So here we're working on DevOps. If you were to be working for a healthcare company, you may want to formulate this differently, but you don't have those options with CrewAI. So anyways, this is the prompt, goes to OpenAI, it returns a query. So this is the query that the LLM said we should use to query the knowledge base. And the amazing thing about this is if you aren't familiar with working with AI, it's kind of telling you exactly what you should do to query your knowledge base, at least in the very beginning, starting here, and then tuning moving forward as you try to optimize your outputs. It's a great starting point. So it is kind of showing you all the right steps. So that's really amazing. But anyways, we take the output, we get the embedding for it. Then we send the embedding to Chroma. It searches the vector DB. And then finally we get a response. And once you have a response, then you send it to the agent to get an answer. It says you are a DevOps knowledge base researcher. So this was from our config. This was also from our YAML config. So you can kind of see how it starts to insert things in here. So this is also from the config. So you can see there's a template under the hood, and we're rendering different pieces of our configuration in here. So this is the role, backstory, goal, and then this is part of their template to the task.
Highlight the I must again.
What's that?
Highlight the above that I must use these formats. My job depends on it.
Oh yeah, I just kind of skipped over this. I think it's hilarious. I've heard of people saying things like this and it actually improving the output from the LLM. I have not actually done it myself, but it's funny to actually see it and integrate it into such a popular library.
I mean, now that I've seen it, I'm actually going to start using it because, and it's got to be in caps. That's the key.
Yeah. Cool. So you can see they have a template. They plug in your variables. So you do have a control over a lot of the prompt here, but it is also hard to piece together. But luckily, Langfuse really does a great job of showing you exactly what's sent. So here's the current task, and then you can see all the knowledge stuff in here. This is everything that it retrieved from Chroma. There's the blue-green deployment. And then finally, it outputs an answer. Then that answer is passed into the DevOps assistant. And this is just one LLM call here. And then you get your final answer. So then it fills in the prompt similarly. And this is the exact same template. So when you're executing on a task, there's one template and you get one response. But then when you add like tools and knowledge, then this thing would grow, of course. And we'll go back, and then this is the output that you saw on Dave's terminal. All right, awesome. So that's it for Langfuse.
So what are your final thoughts here, Dan, on this second factor of owning your own prompts?
I'm curious if this abstraction is really worth it, especially some of the problems that we ran into where when you're actually doing this in pure Python or maybe with a lighter framework, you know exactly when you're creating embeddings, which vector DB you're using. So you can get to all those details with CrewAI, but if you have to know everything about all those details anyways to use CrewAI, what's the benefit? And I think we've talked about kind of two different use cases. So a quick demo, like if you just want to demonstrate like the power of AI, you want to show people like, oh yeah, give us some files. We can show you how you create a knowledge base, can ask it some questions, and you can just say like, all right, this works.
If you're in desperate need and had to get something up quick, you could use CrewAI. Like I could put together a demo now that I know what to do. I can put the CrewAI demo with some knowledge files in about 15 minutes, which is great. But at app files, we're always thinking about production, right? The demos are great, but we're always thinking about production. And this is too much hidden. And like, even if something might be running, it's running great, there might be an update where like their system prompts changes and all of a sudden like things are not working as well. If you're going to spend the time doing this, you need to know what's actually going on. Like for example, like our last demo, we were able to very quickly create a diagram of what the software is doing, how it's working. In this case, you can't. The diagram that Dan showed came from the website, but we don't actually like really know
Yeah, I mean,
what it's
so the
doing, how it's
diagram that I
working.
showed is pretty, so at a high level, and actually their abstraction layer is great. It makes a lot of sense, right? At a high level, you have agents. Agents have tasks, they have memory, they have tools, right? But
Yeah,
then there's all these things happening behind the scenes that it's doing. And we ran into multiple problems where we were just like, wait,
yeah,
why isn't this working? And we're seeing exceptions in the ChromaDB Python package. And so we actually were debugging like low level ChromaDB stuff because we had to. Even though we were
well,
using
it's a black
CrewAI, we were
box.
using this high level abstraction, but we still had to go into ChromaDB. We still had to be like, oh, actually, it's using OpenAI for embeddings, which I think it's actually great for you to know exactly what it's doing under the hood. But then it's like, okay, well, what's the point of the abstraction? Especially when wiring a lot of these things up is really straightforward. And really the problem or the difficult part is tuning RAG, tuning your prompts, and you're going to have to do that no matter what. So,
Yeah, no matter what.
yeah. And so the wiring it up
Yeah,
is actually kind of the easy part. And it's really the optimizing and the tuning and the evals and stuff that's the hard part.
yeah,
And you really want to own that end to end because if you're starting an AI company, that's what's going to be your IP. If you want AI to help you with customer support, then that's really going to help you optimize that and save more and more money on your support operations.
yeah.
Yeah.
But another lesson we learned here was like Langfuse, like even in CrewAI, it took me 5 minutes, even without an AI helping me, to wire that up. And Langfuse, it's open source. You can host it yourself. That way, all your data is contained. You don't have to send it off somewhere. You don't have to worry about privacy issues. And it's like a
Yeah,
must-have. Like
that's
I
actually
was,
a huge point, especially for
yeah,
enterprise systems or healthcare
yeah,
companies. There is a lot of data that you're sending to the LLM that you
yeah,
probably just want to keep inside in your own infrastructure. You don't really want to send
yeah.
that off to some other tool.
Yeah, like we at App Vitals, we're never gonna build a project that doesn't integrate with Langfuse. Just
Yeah.
you have to have it. And go open source, host it yourself. You own all the data. You don't have to worry about anything like that. And matter of fact, all of our demos in the future are all gonna use Langfuse just 'cause it's just so easy to integrate. It literally is. It's you literally. I think it was like one line of code,
Yeah.
right? It's a couple environment variables and one line of code, and then you're integrated. Done. It was so
Yeah.
easy. So
It's amazing.
yeah.
And servability like that, you can't live without it. Once things are in production, you need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Dan, I had a blast working on this. I will say this was actually a pretty fun week to work on this stuff.
Well, that's pretty much it for this video. We wanted to show you why owning your own prompts is crucial for building reliable AI systems. And while templated solutions like CrewAI can help you move faster and create an awesome demo, that black box nature introduces complexity when you're not expecting it, right? You really want things just to work when you're working at that abstraction, but it's not always the case, especially with these newer systems.
But one thing to note, so on our GitHub page, demo I ran, and literally if you want to just do your own demo, literally you swap out the markdown files, you edit the agent and task YAML files, and then you have a working basically RAG setup that'll take you minutes to do. So have fun with it.
All right. So that's it. By the way, if you need help integrating AI into your business, you can check out the first link in this description to book a free consultation call with us to discuss how we can help. And if you found this video helpful, then leave a like, consider subscribing, and ask us any questions in the comments. All right. Thanks.
Bye, guys.